I'm Iris Howe in for Steve Lance. Anti-Israel and student protester at Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil, can be deported. An immigration judge just ruled on the case for the Columbia University graduate. Under U.S. law, a person's immigration status can be revoked if the Secretary of State says their activities in the U.S. could have serious adverse foreign policy consequences. On Wednesday, Secretary Marco Rubio issued a memo saying just that. Khalil took a lead role in organizing student protests at Columbia University last year. He was arrested last month following a deportation order from the Trump administration. And U.S. attorneys also argued that Khalil lied on his green card application, while Khalil's attorney argued that Khalil was exercising his free speech. We'll break down the implications of the case with Ilya Shapiro later in the show. Stay tuned. And a high-stakes showdown over trade taking shape between the world's two largest economies. In China today, raising duties on American imports to 125%. The White House says it's not a good move for Beijing. NTD's Sam Wong has the details.
China,
In an escalation between the world's two largest economies, China on Friday said it is raising tariffs on American goods to 125% starting April 12th. This after President Trump announced his suspending levies on many countries for now, but is hiking tariff rates on China alone. Chinese leader Xi Jinping responding for the first time, saying he's, quote, not afraid of U.S. pressure. The White House has so far imposed 145% duties on China, but the communist regime says it's not planning to escalate past the current rate of 125%.
If China continues to retaliate, it's not good for China. The president wants to do what's right for the American people. He wants to see fair trade practices around the globe, and that's his intention and his goal.
On Wednesday, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry struck a defiant tone on X, posting a clip of former leader Mao Zedong railing against the U.S. in 1953. Ironically, that was just a few years before Mao led China into a famine that killed more than 40 million people.
Well, I'm not calling it a trade war, but I'm saying that China has escalated, and President Trump responded very courageously to that.
Friday's escalation marks China's second round of retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says China has shown itself to be the bad actor through its actions.
This was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday. You might even say that he goaded China into a bad position.
Over the years, U.S. officials have expressed concerns over China's unfair trade practices, from currency manipulation to intellectual property theft to dodging U.S. tariffs through third-party nations. Meanwhile, the communist regime is battling a sluggish economy at home, with record-low youth unemployment and a debt-laden real estate industry. Earlier this week, President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, at some point, hopefully in the near future, China would realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Sam Wong, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
To discuss the latest with China and its response to U.S. tariffs, we're happy to have on Peter Morisi, professor at the University of Maryland and contributing columnist at the Washington Times and Market Watch. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
So the White House said today that it's not good for China to keep retaliating and that President Trump will punch back harder when the U.S. is punched. Do you see further escalation potentially coming up here, and where is this all headed?
Well, I think we've escalated about as much as we can. I mean, there's not much difference between 100% and 1,000%. That 100%, a lot of trade goes away. Most of it goes away. Maybe a little bit more could go away, but I think that we're going to see a dramatic reduction in trade between the two countries almost immediately, and it'll grow from there. You basically have two inconsistent economic systems. And President Xi is in a strong position in that he's been preparing his country for the last 6 years, since he slugged it out with Mr. Trump the last time. To be resilient and to be able to deal with this. And there's going to be heavy economic costs in China, and there's going to be heavy economic costs in the United States. Commentators here are looking at the prospect of a deal. I don't see a deal that is any good between the two of them.
And speaking of a deal here, while President Trump says he thinks he can get a deal with China, what are some potential challenges that could come up in potential negotiations?
Well, the thing is that the Chinese economy is managed in a way that makes it a predator of other economies. It subsidizes virtually everything that goes out. It has a lot of control over its private sector and what they make and sell, and it treats foreign investors very poorly. China, President Xi says, "Well, gee, why can't everybody have their own method of development?" That's fine, but we shouldn't allow ourselves to be victimized by that. The problem here is that we've gotten used to cheap Chinese goods. Basically, the Chinese people don't live as well as they should. They're subsidizing us, and that's going to come to an end. China will try to push its exports more into Europe and the third world, or the global south, as we call it now, and it will have some success, but not all the success it would like. I don't see this coming to an end.
Well, it could actually last for a while for sure, as we're seeing it right now. I wanted to play you a clip from a businessman, Kevin O'Leary, regarding the tariffs on China. Let's take a look.
I have nothing wrong with the Chinese people. I want to sell to them. But it is such an unbalanced playing field on just IP theft. Let's go in with 400% tariffs, shut down all trade until Xi comes to the table and not just solves on tariffs. That's not enough. I need access to the litigation there. I want him to comply with the rules that he agreed to comply with in 2000 with the World Trade Organization. There's thousands of complaints about China, and nobody ever holds them to account. It's unbelievable what they get away with on our own domestic market.
In your opinion, what has led to a lack of actions against China's unfair trade practices over the years, and what would push them to come to the negotiation table right now?
Well, prior administrations have always felt that you can negotiate your way through a problem, especially the Biden administration. It felt it could negotiate on almost anything. And I guess what's happened is Americans have become exhausted with that approach. And a lot of our industries are threatened by Chinese mercantilism. And so I would point out there's a lot of support on both sides of the aisle for a tough stance on China. Where there isn't support is for a tough stance on the Europeans or what we're doing to Canada and so forth. There, Donald Trump is by himself. But when it comes to getting tough with China, I don't think that even the Democrats were satisfied with Joe Biden in that regard. What's happened is this has festered and festered and festered. China's gotten away with more and more and more. And at some point, it's like being in an abusive marriage. Think of this as an arranged marriage. And at some point, one or the other party just wants out. And that's what's happened. Donald Trump can say he can reconcile the situation, but Donald Trump believes he can negotiate a deal with anyone, including Vladimir Putin. I think that's silly. And my feeling is that if he comes up with a deal with China, Xi wins, because Xi will make another deal like he did the last time, whose terms he won't keep, and that will be advantageous for China, but not the United States.
And speaking of trusting China with its own words and agreements here, we know that California Governor Gavin Newsom has been pushing to make some agreements with other countries, of course, presumably including China, to get a tariff exemption for California goods. But of course, despite his olive branch here, China just hit Hollywood's movie exports. What do you make of this? Why is it not working here?
Well, I mean, he's a state governor. He's not a national official, and he's there to protect California's interests. And so the movie business is a major industry in California, as is IT, and he would like to maintain market access for American cinema products. And so I expect this from him. I also don't expect Donald Trump to listen to him. This is really what he's doing is playing to the voters. But I don't think he's going to get very far. Now, President Xi could throw him an olive branch, and let his movies in simply to try to divide Americans, and that would not be a bad tactic for him to pursue. I wouldn't like it, but I expect President Xi to pull out all the corks. He has decided that America is a society in decline, that we are a failing society, and that the way he runs his country is superior. Now, whatever stance you have about that is irrelevant. That's how he feels. He's got his population under very tight control through your social credit system. And he can pretty much do as he pleases. And people will support him 100%. Because if they only support him, they're not 99%. The 1% that don't support him will end up in jail. Here, Donald Trump has got an authoritarian streak, but he is not capable of enforcing that level of compliance or that level of support with his views.
Well, China trying to divide Americans here, definitely a risky tactic used by the China government for a long time here. Peter Morisi, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It was nice to visit with you.
And in a new aviation incident, a small plane crashed this morning in southern Florida near a major interstate highway and railroad tracks. 3 people were killed and 1 was injured. The Federal Aviation Administration identified the plane as a Cessna 310. A Boca Raton Fire Rescue said the crash emitted a fireball when it hit the ground, injuring a person in a nearby car. The local police department said several roads near the airport were closed near Interstate 95. We'll have more details on this story as it develops. And as we continue to follow the tragic news from New Jersey yesterday, where a helicopter crashed into the Hudson River and claiming the lives of 6 people, including a family of 5. The crash is being investigated by the New York City Police Department, Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, and National Transportation Safety Board. The victims were identified today. NED's Chris Bob has more from Jersey City.
Yesterday, just behind me, a sightseeing helicopter carrying a family of 5 crashed into the Hudson River. There's still plenty of debris floating in the Hudson behind me. A headset from the craft, a child's shoe, a life vest. Divers are working to recover parts of the helicopter. Today at a press conference organized in the Jersey City Hall, NTSB Chair Jennifer Hammond-D gave an update on the work that 17 NTSB personnel, including 10 investigators, are carrying out now.
They'll focus on the helicopter operator. They'll look at the owner of the helicopter itself, and they will look at pilot qualifications and other information. We have experts on helicopter airworthiness, on structures, and on systems. We also have our evidence management team here, as well as our transportation disaster assistance team. The New York Police Department is still diving for components and pieces of the helicopter that we are still looking to recover. Those include the main rotor, the main transmission, the roof structure, and the tail structure.
Hudson River is a very, very tough place to dive. So we're dealing with the expertise of the NYPD, and they're going to make sure it's done safely, and we're going to recover what's down there. It may take some time. Very, very murky. I mean, I was there last night when they were physically removing the victims. You literally can't see your hand in front of you, but they did a phenomenal job.
The NTSB chair asked the public to share any photos, videos, or other information about the crash to the board. A full report of the investigation will take place and will come out sometime in the coming weeks, months, or years. Chris Bob, NTD News, Jersey City, New Jersey.
The commander of a U.S. Space Force base in Greenland has been fired. She sent an email breaking with official messaging following Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to the Danish territory. The email reportedly defended the base's relationship with Denmark and Greenland. The Space Force said Colonel Susan Myers was removed as commander over a, quote, loss of confidence in her ability to lead. And Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark, which is a NATO ally of the U.S. President Trump has expressed interest in taking over the territory for national security purposes. And overnight, the Senate confirmed General Dan Raisin Kane as the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position. And Kane retired from the military last year as a lieutenant general. The new position means that he will return to active duty and be promoted. The vote to confirm him was a fairly bipartisan one, 60-25. He is replacing General C.Q. Brown, who President Trump fired just 7 weeks ago.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.